Hey guys. Hey guys, we're about to get started. Welcome everyone. So first of all, welcome to Products That Count. It's a community and a speaker series where we really try to focus on welcoming product leaders from all kinds of industries. Today we have Elliot Schmuckler. But before we get to that, I just want to say, first of all, the important stuff is pizza will be here momentarily. It's not there yet, but it'll be there. And on top of that, I just want to thank our sponsors, so Yelp, for donating this wonderful space. If you're interested in working at Yelp, then there's someone standing by the Yelp sign below over there. So just go over there and take a look. Also, WeChat, future of mobile and tech, really famous in China, as everyone knows. And Pragmatic Marketing, who is launching a new foundations class. And if you want any training, just go to pragmaticmarketing.com and check it out. So now to welcome Elliot, who has more than 10 years of experience in product across Wealthfront, LinkedIn, eBay, and now he's at VP of Product at Instacart. So go ahead.
All right, thank you. Hello. Hello. Wow, those are really big screens over here. I'm sure you guys are going to see the slides just fine. First off, I'm sorry you haven't had the pizza yet. I know hunger makes it a little bit hard to think about growth. And I'm going to have charts and numbers. So it might get a little bad. So if you smelled the pizza, you might want to sneak out, grab the pizza, come back, something like that. But hopefully it's not too bad. So I'm here to talk about growth. Who wants to grow their product? Okay. No? Come on. I can't imagine that you wouldn't want to grow something about your product. But I'm going to disappoint some of you a little bit today with the talk. Because A, I'm not going to give you the answer to your growth problem. Pretty sure of that. B, some of the things I talk about may not apply to the problems you're facing right this moment. But what I'm hoping to do is give you ways of thinking about growth so that when they apply, they're useful. Of course, hopefully you remember them, which is where the pizza comes in. So why can't I just solve your growth problem, you might be thinking, or why can't I give you a presentation that just makes your product grow? Well, there's one reason, which is there's actually different kinds of approaches to growth that you need depending on the level of traction that your product has, right? 3 categories of traction that I talk about. Pre-traction, you've launched something, you don't know if there's product market fit yet, you're trying to work it out, who knows what's going to happen. Early traction, something is working, folks are using your product, you feel good, maybe there's product market fit, but you're not big yet, right? And then scaled product, you're big, right? Maybe not only big in China, big in, wherever you want to be. Who has a pre-traction product in this room? Okay, some of you, I'm sorry. Who has an early traction product? All right, more of you. Who has a, product that's big? All right, some more. A bunch of you said none of the above, which is kind of weird. I'm not going to ask you again, but I can tell you that some of the stuff here will apply to your category and some of the stuff won't. So let's talk about some of the obvious categories and how to solve their growth problems. Pre-traction product. Who's read this essay, Do Things That Don't Scale by Paul Graham? All right. If you have a pre-traction product, just read this essay. It's pretty good. You probably can leave the talk right now, grab the pizza, read the essay. Because before you have product market fit, very little of what I'm going to tell you is going to help you. But hopefully you get to the place where it does. So if you want to see what your future is like, you can stay and listen to the talk. But really, pre-traction product, do things that don't scale. Read the essay. It's actually quite good. All right, scaled product, right? Those of you with very large products. Well, you can kind of do anything when you're a scaled product. You're probably running hundreds of experiments. You know what already works for you in terms of growth. You know what got you to scale, right? So you can do more of those things. You can even launch new products that are similar to your product, adjacencies, right? Or buy companies to get growth. So you can do a lot, right? And most of the stuff that you'll hear in growth talks will work really, really well for scaled products. Lots of experimentation, try stuff, double down on things that work, right? I actually give a lot of growth talks, and I always use the line, double down on things that work. But you know what you need to do that? You actually need to know what works. And you kind of only know it once you have a scaled product and something has worked for you and gotten you to scale. So one way scaled products grow is big companies just buy other companies, right? If you're wondering why Facebook bought Instagram and WhatsApp, Oculus, it's because they can grow that way. You probably can't do it unless you're at their scale. So I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to focus today on an early traction product. Early traction product, something has worked, but you may not know what it is. You've been running around doing things that don't scale. Some combination of them has gotten you traction. You don't know what combination has gotten you traction, right? But it's good. You got something. And you're probably starting to wonder, how do I get from early traction to scale? What do I do? How do I grow bigger? How do I double my product next year? And stuff is happening. Things are changing constantly. And you don't know exactly what's going on and why things are changing because your product has never been here before, right? Who feels like any of this describes their product? Yeah, some of you, a bunch of you. All right. Well, then you'll find a lot of use out of this, but maybe others will too. So I'll tell you why early traction is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun because no one actually knows what's going on. And so if you happen to know what's going on, people really listen to what you say. So it's a good place to be for a product manager. I was fortunate to experience 3 early traction products. I was at LinkedIn when it just crossed about 10 million members. Right, that sounds like a lot, but for a social networking product, that's nothing. Like you want billions of members, right? And worked at Wealthfront, which is a great way to invest your money. Shareholder. Worked at Wealthfront when they had crossed 150 million in assets that the company was managing. For a wealth manager, 150 million in assets is nothing, right? You want trillions in assets, or at least like 50 billion, 100 billion in assets. And worked at Instacart, or started at Instacart about a year and a half ago when Instacart was selling hundreds of millions of groceries. Now that sounds like a lot, I know, but grocery sales are like $1 trillion in the US, so that's not a lot. And was fortunate to work on growth in these places and grow them into bigger scale. Worked on growth at LinkedIn, growing into 200 million plus. Now I think they're 500 million or something like that. Wealthfront growing into the billions of assets, and they're about twice this size. And now have gotten Instacart into the billions of grocery sales, which is still small in the grocery market, but it's only been like a year. So we'll get there. So today what I'm going to talk to you about are when you're in this early traction product and stuff is happening around you, how do you understand what's going on? So I'm going to try to give you techniques for understanding what's going on with your product that you can then use to have the product grow faster. Make sense? All right. Hopefully by the end of the session, you'll be able to answer these questions, which I get a lot. Why isn't the product growing? Why has growth slowed down? how can we make it grow faster, or how can we achieve, arbitrary level of growth in arbitrary amount of time? We launched something, it didn't work, why not? Why has a metric dropped that we look at, right? Why? Who's heard questions like this before? Yeah, I'm sure most of you have. So I'm going to give you some ways of thinking about answering these questions that hopefully are useful when you face these situations again. So let's talk about technique number 1. So this is where the graphs come in. So this is actual, each line is a different year. And the graph are new customers of Instacart. And the bottom axis are months of the year. Who sees anything interesting about these graphs? Seasonality, someone said. That's right. So this is an important concept that a lot of folks don't get, is that many, many businesses are seasonal. In fact, it says seasonality in really big letters on the next slide. So good call. So you guys have probably seen examples of seasonality. You may not have read them as such, or may not have internalized that it might apply to your product, right? What kind of services have huge upticks during the holiday season, during December, November? Yeah, commerce, retail, right? So like an Amazon or an eBay is going to have massive upticks during that time. What do you think has big upticks during back to school? Say that again? Clothing, maybe. Yes, school supplies, maybe Target. How about a site that sells textbooks? Right? This is actually an experience I had on eBay. We owned this site called half.com. I don't know if anyone's heard about it. And eBay was really great at reporting numbers every day on sales for every property. And I would look at the half.com numbers and I would be like, why do we own this site? Like, we have a team working on it. Like, it's not generating any sales. And so once at a happy hour, I went to the product manager of half.com and I'm like, why are you here? You're not generating that many sales. What's, did eBay buy you? What's going on? And he's like, Elliot, talk to me again in September. Of course, I waited until September and saw sales go 100x on half.com, because actually there was no point to half.com throughout the rest of the year. All of their sales were concentrating during back to school. So back to school is a real thing. You don't actually have to sell textbooks. You can be Instacart too. Right? Why does Instacart tick up when it's back to school? Well, kids are home. The schedules are more compressed. No one has time to go grocery shopping. Maybe a service that delivers groceries to you and your family would be helpful during that time. We actually have this down to a science where we can tell you when the uptick will be in every geographic area based on when their schools start, right? In every area, school starts that are, they're all like between August 15th and like September 15th, but it's all different days. And so based on when that day is, we can tell you when there'll be an uptick in that area. So you saw some of that on the previous slide. Believe it or not, LinkedIn had back to school seasonality. Not sure why. Students, maybe folks, after the summer get serious about their career. I don't know, but it was true. The other fun one is weather. There's plenty of services where they're going to do better in the winter than in the summer, or vice versa, right? So the one I've seen is do better in winter than in summer. Instacart is that, right? During the summer, you're traveling, you're out, you're eating at restaurants, you're having a good time, you're not thinking about your groceries. During the winter, you're in the house more, it's colder, maybe there's snow on the ground where you are, not in California, but maybe there's snow on the ground where you are, right? Maybe Instacart would be helpful so that you don't have to go out into the snow. Uptick at the beginning of the year. Saw this one at LinkedIn. Why? Everyone always says New Year's resolutions. I heard a whisper of that over here. We thought so too. Having stepped away for a few years, I actually think it's more than that. I think it's also that folks talk when they're traveling during the holidays to a circle that's different than their normal day-to-day circle. And so at the beginning of the year, you get like an increased word of mouth effect that because we're a very viral site, or LinkedIn is, we saw that in Wealthfront. Same thing, right? Common New Year's resolution, find a new job, manage my money better, right? But also some of that word of mouth effect, I think, was powerful. But even or not, we see it with Instacart too. I think it's the word of mouth effect. I don't think anyone's setting a resolution about buying more groceries. Although maybe they're thinking about eating healthy or something like that. So that's possible as well. So anyway, these are the common forms of seasonality, right? So when you see kind of upticks or downticks in your product during these times, seasonality is a good thing to watch out for. To detect it, you may need to look at several years of data, right? So this is 1 year and this is another year. And the reason you guys were able to tell this is because these 2 years have the same shape, basically, plus or minus a few things. So you can tell, well, yeah, every year there's this big uptick around back to school. You may have to find metrics that are, clean in terms of reviewing seasonality to you, things you haven't moved through your product changes, or things that have a strong or are impacted strongly with these seasonal trends. So this is new users, new customers of Instacart, which is kind of our strongest seasonally moving metric, right? Existing customers may order all throughout the year. And then there's a fun trick. If you don't do this already, you should measure year-over-year change in your metric, because that type of measurement will be resilient to some seasonal effects. Who knows what year-over-year change is? Wow. Okay, it's this. So you take your metric. You guys are not good at raising your hand if you know this stuff. You take your metric, you divide it by the same metric 52 weeks ago if it's weekly, same time last year. You subtract 1 from it. That's your year-over-year change. If you follow the same seasonal curve year-over-year, then this number will be stable for you, even though every week things are moving around with the seasonal pattern. So this is a good metric. If you haven't measured your metrics this way, I suggest you try it. Seasonality is also a great explainer of things. So if you had a decline like this on your graph, someone who doesn't know about seasonality might ask you, why are signups lower? What's going on, Elliot? Thought we were going to do growth. Isn't that why we hired you? And so you could say, well, it's seasonality, obviously. Don't use that too much, because sometimes it's not. By the way, who knows what year-over-year is, how you can see whether year-over-year is changing on this graph? It's pretty easy. It's the gap between these two lines, right? So you can tell that year-over-year is pretty constant throughout this period, even though there's a crazy decline happening. So that's one way to be confident in saying it's just seasonality. It's okay. All right. One more warning. You can very easily break seasonality by doing stuff with your products, by growing faster. So I'm going to return the graph that I've been showing you with these 2 years of Instacart new customers, and I'm going to add another year to it. It's going to be in green. Thanks. Can't see the seasonal pattern here, right? This is actually 2017, because we're growing so fast that we're overcoming the seasonal effect, right? So that's why important to find a clean metric. You may not be able to see it, especially when your product's really early, because you're growing so fast that you're not going to be subject to these effects. You're going to break through the seasonality. All right. Let's look at another approach to thinking. So this is an actual launch that we did at Instacart. We launched a new retailer on our platform. And you can see they're out with a bang, and they did some marketing, and they did some more marketing, but not much is happening over here, right? And so the retailer calls me, not directly, but through folks, and says, we're not growing. What's going on, Elliot? I thought Instacart was going to be huge for our sales. Anyone have an idea what's going on here? So there's potentially a seasonal effect that's bad. There's another thing going on here. So there's something about newness. So what I term this is the launch effect, right? What happens when you launch something new? How many of you like going to new restaurants, for example? I know it's more of you than that. We're in San Francisco, people. What happens when a restaurant just opens and it's new? There's a line. There's a huge crowd. Kind of looks like this, maybe. Google image search. Restaurant wine. Kind of looks like this. There's a huge crowd. Is that crowd there every day of the restaurant's life? No. After a while, the crowd dissipates, and whatever the traffic that the restaurant is going to get, goes to a more normal range, right? The truth is folks like checking out new things. And we just launched the new thing. So everyone was rushing to check it out. And once the newness had worn off, they went back home or went back to another website. And so how do you understand this? How do you understand if the product is doing well under these conditions? Was this a successful launch or not for Instacart? And so lots of you are probably thinking, wow, I'm going to look at retention rates and cohort analyses and all these kinds of things, which you should do. I'm going to give you a much easier way of doing this that works a lot, which is just look at new customers or new users and returning users separately when you're analyzing your product, right? So this is new customers. You can see big launch impact, and then after a while, folks disappear. This is returning customers. You can see returning customers continue to grow. So eventually, once this settles into whatever its normal level is, we're going to grow at this rate, right? Very, super simple way of looking at it. No cohorts, no retention, but it actually encapsulates all of that. So I gave this answer to the retailer, and then this is how we've grown. Ultimately, since then, we've more than doubled since that point in July when we had that phone call. So haven't heard from them again. I'm assuming it's okay. So this technique, separating new users from existing users, is actually a great way to separate, to diagnose a bunch of growth issues, right? So if you get a question, why aren't we growing? Ask that question twice for new users and for existing users and understand whether there are different things there. For new users, very often it's a change in acquisition strategy, or it's a launch effect, or some marketing has been stopped or maybe stopped working or what have you. And for existing users, it's typically much more serious stuff like increasing churn or a strong seasonal effect, right? These will lead to very different solutions. But if you're just looking at the combination of these, you may not be able to figure out what's going on. So try this approach. All right, let's go to mystery 3. We're going to try to make this interactive. You guys are not good at raising your hands. So maybe we'll just have you scream out what you think the answer is. So the answer, the question is, you're running the growth team, and you've been really, really successful. In fact, you've 10x'd your new signups, your new customers, whatever you call your new users, is their retention and engagement going to A, decrease, B, stay the same, C, improve? Yes, yes. Right, you guys are not very enthusiastic, but it's A. Right, you guys get this already. Every time you grow a big pool of users, you create kind of a larger inflow of users, chances are the average quality, however you define it, of those users is going to decrease. It's amazing how many people forget that, especially in these situations, and expect things to stay the same, or maybe expect things to improve. So I call this the law of declining engagement. You guys know this already. This is an actual example from Instacart. This is a piece of our product that we were trying to get more adoption of. And so we got, like 300% growth here over a year in this product. But then when we look at the engagement of folks that adopted this product, of course, it went down, right? Still a win in the end, because we got way more engaged users than we would have otherwise. But shouldn't have been surprising to anyone that when we grew the product this much, the average engagement actually decreased. Right? Will happen with everything that you do. So there's just a summary of it. If you make your cohorts larger, you'll get less engagement. Sometimes if they're newer, you'll get less engagement. So if someone asks you this, you can say, well, Elliot said this always happens. Don't worry. Right? Of course, you can change this. So the question assumed that you did nothing to correct for this, did nothing to lift your engagement. But you don't have to do nothing. You can do work. And very often it's possible to maintain the same level of engagement as you once had. So, all right, let's go to mystery 4. How do we grow faster? Who wants to know the answer to that question? All right, that was more hands. So that's good. Very often when someone asks you how do we grow faster, they actually want to get to, like, how do we get to some goal X in some amount of time, right? And that goal could be users, revenues, profile edits, I don't know, right? Whatever that goal is. Usually they have something in mind in terms of a goal and a timeline. And I'll tell you something that will help you answer this question and help you address these requests. And this is something I learned at eBay. So at eBay, we had this fun relationship, and I actually don't remember the actual number, so it may not be 10 cents, by the way. But we had this fun relationship. eBay is an auction site. So, we spent a bunch of time in our product driving bids on auctions. You might be wondering, why do we want to drive bids on auctions? What is the value of a bid? So eBay had solved this problem, and through a bunch of analysis, they had concluded that each bid to the company was worth 10 cents in sales. You guys see that this is pretty useful, right? If I have a product feature and it drove 1 million bids, well, I can say, well, that was 100,000 in sales. What have you done, ads product manager? Have you driven 100,000 today, right? So it allows you to compare product changes, feature impact across disparate categories, because you can reduce everything to this very important goal for the company, right? It also allows you to forecast and model. If you're doing 1 million bids a day, then you're doing 100,000 in revenue a day about. If you think that you can take that to 2 million bids a day, then you know how much more revenue that's going to be, and you can add it to your other product features. So it allows you to forecast and model what you can achieve through product changes and what you can achieve through your growth activities. So it's a really, really useful relationship. So one way to answer the question of how do we get to Y in 12 months is to calculate these kinds of relationships for the key product actions in your product, the key things that users do with your product, right? I call this value of a product action. We had a whole team at LinkedIn that would build this for everything, right? Here's the value of an invitation. Here's the value of someone updating their profile. Here's the value of someone signing up. Here's the value of someone uploading their contacts to LinkedIn, right? And it was incredibly useful in prioritizing and comparing product initiatives. And so these are some things you may want to value. What's the value of a new customer to you? What's the value of someone being resurrected, someone who had churned out as a customer coming back? What's the value of a referral or an invitation to you, right? What's the value of some sort of user-contributed content, right? At LinkedIn, we value profile edits, contact uploads, those kinds of user-contributed content, right? Figure out these values in terms of company goals that matter, and now you can value changes in your product or growth wins in terms of how far they take you along the path to your company's goal. So, talked about this kind of approach, having a value of your product actions, allows you to compare and prioritize different initiatives, and perhaps most importantly, it allows you to forecast. I can see how many profile edits I'm getting and how many referrals I'm getting and how many new signups I'm getting and say, this is where I'm going to be in terms of my company goal. Or I can model impact on those things. I'm going to increase profile edits and new signups and those kinds of things and understand how far that will get me in terms of my company goal. And so it's actually great for answering this question. How do I get to Y in 12 months? Because you can forecast based on what's happening right now, and then you can model in changes to see what you have to do to actually meet this goal, what you have to do with your product. So try this approach. All right, final mystery. Why is a metric down? I can't tell you how many times I've heard this question. I'm not going to ask you guys whether you've heard it because you're not good at raising your hand. But I used to hear this every day at LinkedIn when I was there. I'd get an email from the CEO, would watch like 300 metrics, and he'd find one that was down, and send an email to me, and he's like, Elliot, why are profile edits per session down last week? I'm like, I don't know, Jeff. Is that really an important metric? So very often you will get this question, why is the metric down? Hopefully it's a more and more important metric than profile edits per session. Hopefully it's signups or orders or whatever is important to your company goals. I'll give you a few ways to answer this question. And by the way, you've learned a bunch of ways already, right? Could be seasonality. Always the first answer. It's just seasonality. It's okay. Right? It could be a launch effect in some cases. Could be, law of declining engagement. Oh, it's been going down for years. But very often it's actually this, which is the longest slide. But very often it's the fact that the users you're getting today, right, that are coming in, that are becoming new customers, new users of your product, are different than folks you got some time ago, right? And so I'll give you a few ways of understanding that and whether that's what's happening. The first one is segmentation and mix shift. So believe it or not, although you may look at a big single metric, new users coming in, new signups, what have you, there's ways to segment that metric that will be quite useful in understanding how that metric moves. So this is probably one that you all have seen, right? You take your new signups or your new customers or whatever, you just segment them by channel. I got this many from SEO and this many from SEM. And I don't know what happens if they touch multiple of those channels. There's complex logic that credits them to both or chooses one as the winner, or third-party tool makes the choice. I don't know. So you've seen this, right? You probably use this if you work on new user acquisition, new customer acquisition. But this is a segmentation, right? And this is a way, if your new customers are down this week, or your new users are down, one way to analyze it is to say, okay, are they down across the board? Or is one segment down? Or what's going on, right? And that will get you closer to that answer. I'm going to run you through a real simple example of how to do that, which is this. And by the way, this is another segmentation that's fun. If you have a global product, right, maybe segmenting by country or region of the world is an interesting idea. So this is super simple product that's only live in the US and Europe, and for some reason decided to collapse Europe into one segment, mostly because it made the slide easier. And so you're getting new users a week. You got 1,400 new users a week. You've been growing, so you see the year-over-year numbers. Maybe these are in the millions, I don't know. You've been growing 100% year over year in terms of your new users. And this week, you're down 4% on new users, right? CEO sends you an email and says, hey, we're down 4%. What did you do? Well, what happened here? Right? Pretty easy. Something happened in Europe, and the US was fine. And this is the value of doing this kind of segmentation. You can think about this across any segmentation you come up with: acquisition channel, country, types of users, engagement level of users, whatever you come up with. Something happened to one segment and not to the other. Now we have more room to explore and get to an answer. We can figure out, well, maybe Europe has different seasonality than the US, because seasonality is very often the answer. Holidays, type of seasonality. Right? Does this make sense? Yes. All right, let's do a more complex example. And this is mix shift. So mix shift is what happens when your segments, whatever they are, grow at different rates. So in this example, we're still in the US and still in Europe. But you can see that Europe has more growth in new users, new customers than the US does. But there's an unfortunate side to this, where Europe actually has less engagement of its new customers than the US, right? A European customer signs up and places one order that week. A US customer signs up and places two. Again, round numbers because they made the slide simple, but you get the idea. And so what happens? Well, over time, what you see is that because Europe is growing faster, right, and contributing more of these low engagement users, your overall engagement is actually going to decline. You didn't do anything. You didn't break engagement, right? In fact, you're trying to grow your service, right, and you're doing a pretty good job, according to these numbers. But you're growing your service with this segment of lower quality users than the higher quality users. And what's going on is that even though you grew new users by 100% and total orders by 90%, your orders per user has actually declined 5% over this year, right? And so if someone comes to you and says, why did orders per user decline by 5%? You've actually figured out the answer using the segmentation. Oh, it's because European users are less active. Maybe we should work on that, right? Or maybe we should find more ways of getting US users, because they're the kinds of users that we want. So this is mix shift. This is real. When you're going to work on growth, you're going to find ways of getting certain segments to grow fast while other segments do not respond to whatever that you did, to whatever feature you did or whatever change you made. And so very often you'll get this shifting of segments and their mix, and you'll get impact like this on your metrics. So watch out for this and use this technique of segmentation to watch for mix shifts in your numbers. All right, Elliot, this was a lot of stuff, and I haven't had my pizza. What do I do with this? Well, first of all, I'll give you 2 tips. One is every time you see a change in your numbers, use it as an opportunity to learn. Use it as an opportunity to dig in, try these techniques, try other techniques, but understand what's going on, because that's going to be learning. Everything you've seen here, I learned it at some point over the last however many years by seeing a crazy change in the numbers and not understanding it, right? And concluding a lot of the time that it was seasonality. So treat every change in the numbers as an opportunity to learn. As you start to understand what's happening and how your numbers change, that will allow you to predict and prioritize. That will allow you to say, well, my numbers will be higher in September. Or, this product change will lead to great results next year. Or this is the better product change for me to make than this other one. And of course, that will allow you to plan and execute and hopefully grow your services much faster. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. I will take questions. Yes.
So I'm sure you have a lot of other friends that you debate about this. So in terms of comparing a growth team for consumer business versus like an enterprise business, what do you recommend based in terms of how you would adapt these to enterprise?
Yeah. So the question is, how do we adapt some of this stuff to enterprise? And so I actually find that it's highly adaptable, but your goals are a little different, right? In the enterprise space, in a consumer space, you're trying to actually get the sale on the website or through your app. In the enterprise space, you're typically trying to get a lead, right, that your sales team can actually close. But the same techniques that grow consumer services can be used to grow leads and grow better leads, right, that have a higher rate of being closed or a higher deal value or whatever you want. Literally the same techniques. So that's what I recommend. A bunch of companies now also do kind of hybrid consumer enterprise things where they'll have a consumer product that grows using all of this. And then once a company gets enough adoption of that consumer version of the product, that's when they send in the sales team. That's another way to do this, which is you just have a consumer growth team trying to grow a consumer version of your enterprise product. And when it's time to convert a company into the enterprise version, you send in your team. Other questions? Yeah.
What type of problems have you, or current problems have you seen with Instacart that you haven't seen in the past from your experience?
I can't say that it's a huge number that are very distinctive. So the question is, what kinds of growth problems have I seen at Instacart that I haven't seen other places? Instacart has some interesting elements in that for us to take an order, we need to have enough shoppers that can fulfill it. So there's an element of counterbalancing kind of consumer growth with sort of limitations in this supply growth or shopper growth. And so we actually have to have 2 growth teams, one that works on consumer growth and one that works, using basically the same techniques, works on growing the shopper pool. So that's one. It's a little different. Other questions? Yeah.
How like seasonal trends. Is there a similar effect that you've noticed that breaks the whole launch effect?
Yeah. So the question is there an effect that I've noticed that breaks the launch effect, similar to how hypergrowth breaks seasonality? So one thing, of course, is a soft launch, right? When I presented the launch effect, that was what you would call, full launch, right? There's marketing, there's PR. I think that retailer had, hired the world's largest shopping cart to, put an Instacart thing on it. So that's a serious launch. If you're doing a soft launch, you've just turned it on, you're not talking about it, then it's going to be a very different thing. And that's the one thing I've seen where you won't get that big bump, right? You might get nothing, or you might get kind of slow growth at a more reasonable pace. Yeah. Yeah. I define engagement as actions, right? And for some companies, actions could be viewing a page, right? There are companies that got companies focused on content or advertising businesses. But for most companies, and the ones I use as examples, engagement is taking some action, placing an order, putting in a deposit, sending an invitation, editing some data. So that's how I've been defining it. Outside of kind of advertising-based models and those kinds of companies, I don't think just coming back is enough of a bar of engagement. Yeah. Yeah. There's no, ironclad answer on this because obviously most of the things you build, you're uncertain as to what they will do, right? So there's always some subjectivity and uncertainty in the process. I think to the best of your ability, you have to model some expectation of impact from those things. And usually you can base it on similar things that you've done or some fundamentals around, well, how many people even see this feature, right? That's an input into how powerful this feature could be. So usually based on those kinds of inputs, you have to essentially take your best guess at doing it and then try it and learn, right? I don't, although there's value in prioritization up front, I think the best teams take a shot at prioritizing up front, but then really switch directions as they go based on what they're learning. Yeah.
Understanding what's happening is one of those things that expand all the time.
Yes.
When do you draw the line and say, I don't know, here's seasonality?
Well, if in doubt, say seasonality. I think that's a judgment call that you have to make. I think I tend to stop if I don't think it's anything that we did, right? In that case, if something's down, I tend to stop if it's pretty clear it's nothing that we did, right? Even if I don't have a perfect answer. So those kinds of things, but I think you have to develop some sense of, what does a bug look like versus a seasonal drop versus something else through just doing this a lot. Yeah. I haven't seen that yet. For better or for worse, I think there's always room to find a little bit more and find a little bit more. Obviously, everything slows down. So if you go back a few years when I was at LinkedIn, growth in the US slowed down pretty quickly, but there were all of these international opportunities and international growth was very fast. So I haven't really seen that example. But over time, of course, things slow down unless you do something to accelerate them. Yeah.
How do you structure your growth team between product marketing and engineering? Does that change?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if I have the absolute perfect answer to how to do it. I tend to collapse lots of things into product, right? So very often I'll have performance marketing in product because that way, folks are working together and looking at the same dashboards and those kinds of. That's how I have it today, where we have product growth team and a performance marketing team that are both part of my organization. But I think it works in all sorts of ways as long as everyone has the right mindset and is looking at the right numbers and trying to get to the truth and is aligned around growing the company rather than doing their thing. Yeah.
So what's the difference in what's really critical
Usually I can't predict that it's going to flatten. Well, no, I mean, one of the ways to do it is to look at just forecast growth in general, right? And so that will give you a sense of what if you do nothing today, what your growth would be. And it's pretty easy to do using the value of product actions framework that I talked about. So for most services, for example, if you just look at the activity of your existing users, right, and how that trends over time as they age, and your influx of new users, and your understanding of how they become engaged, and combine those two together, you will get a forecast for your growth, right? And that's a pretty useful tool because that's a kind of forecast of if I did nothing, here's where I would be. And if that forecast says you're not going to grow very fast next year, well, then maybe you should do something. Yeah. I haven't seen anything that doesn't really fit this mold. I mean, every action, if you're building it, you think is going to have some value. I've certainly seen actions that don't have as much value as you think, right? Or don't have as much value as folks have, anticipated at the beginning. For example, at LinkedIn, in the early days, we built a lot of content features that didn't have the same value as just inviting someone or working on your profile at the time, despite us being very excited about them, right? So I've certainly seen folks, features once they're out in the wild, not have the same value as people expected. But I haven't seen things which have no value or have negative value or something like that. All right, last question. Sure. So at Instacart, I think we have about 20 data scientists, if I'm not mistaken. No, spread throughout. They focus on a bunch of things. We do have one data scientist on growth. But we also have 7 data scientists working on logistics and fulfillment and those kinds of things. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Elliot. Before we break for pizza, since it's here now, just want to say, there's going to be another talk on 11/29 with the head of product from Dropbox, so make sure you check it out. And also provide feedback for this event because we actually take the feedback and actually do something about it. So definitely provide, and we use it for MPS and everything like that. And we will also do shout outs right now. So before we break for pizza, if you do have anything you want to say, like if you're looking for a job, if you want to hire any people, you guys can line up right here and you can basically do a shout out. So come on up if you have anything.
Hi, everyone. Hello? Can you guys hear me? No, you can.
I don't think the room can hear you.
Yeah. Hello? So we're going to do shout outs right now. So
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes? So they said we can announce Open Recs. I work for Box, and a lot of what you saw here presented, we do in my team. I lead the product analytics team, so come to me.
So hello everyone. I'm working on a side project that's an enterprise software productivity product that utilizes AI and NLP. It's a side project. I'm just looking for a technical person to team up with me. I have a couple of other tech people, but I'm looking for someone who's a lead person to just do it. And, working on it could double your salary next year, even if it's not a commercial product. I don't know. So you can email me at ritum@idealily.org, idealily.org.